Hey everybody, Thomas Joseph here, and today I am super excited to share with you a fondue how-to. Now, we've gotten a lot of questions and comments about fondue and how to avoid a broken fondue like this version I have here. Now, going through all of the effort of making fondue and buying the expensive ingredients, I would say, you really want to follow these tricks and tips that I'm going to share with you, and you will have success and the most delicious fondue in the end. So let's start with the cheeses, because the cheese is really at the core, the center of a fantastic fondue. So I have 8 ounces of Gruyere cheese here that's cut up into really tiny cubes. Now, when you're making fondue, you want to make sure that you're using either a small grate or a small cube of cheese. I like cubing the cheese because I think it gives extra stringiness. And the Gruyere cheese is a fantastic cheese, one, because it's a Swiss cheese, which is where fondue comes from. It's actually from the French border of Switzerland in the Alpine region. And I'm also using Emmenthal, which is another type of Swiss cheese that is really great and high in moisture and melts really well. So I'm gonna cube this up into 1/4 inch cubes, just like I did for this version here. Now, when you're making a fondue, if you can't find these cheeses, try to find cheeses that are similar in moisture content. So you don't want to use a Parmesan cheese or a Pecorino cheese here, nothing that's overly aged, because that has a low moisture content, and really you need a high moisture content here to create this fondue sauce, something that will be nice and fluid. And now for the second tip here, what you want to do is you want to coat your cheese in some flour or a starch. I'm using all-purpose flour here today, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, but you could also use cornstarch or arrowroot. And coating the cheese in the starch really helps to coat the proteins in the cheese and will help to avoid a broken fondue. So make sure that you add in a little bit of starch, and tossing it together with the cheese is really important, okay? So start there. I'm also gonna add a little bit of white pepper. Now, if you don't have white pepper, you don't like the taste of white pepper, you could certainly use black pepper, that's totally fine. And a little bit of cayenne pepper, just for a little bit of heat. Again, this is totally optional, it's just kind of to add a little dimension to your fondue. So toss this together, and then you're gonna just put this off to the side while we create the liquid base for our fondue. So now, to create the liquid base for the fondue, what we're ultimately going to melt the cheese into, I'm going to use 1 1/3 cups of a dry white wine. Now, if you wanted to be really kind of classic, you would use a wine from the region of Austria or Switzerland or that region. Gruner would be fantastic, a Gruner Veltliner. I'm gonna pour this right into my fondue pot, which I have set over a medium heat. Now, you want to bring this up to a slight simmer before we add the cheese, but you don't want this mixture to be boiling. One important tip here, guys, is that you don't want to boil the cheese. You really don't want to bring the cheese over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. If you go from 130 degrees up in cheeses, what happens is it starts to separate the proteins and the fats, and that ultimately is what creates a broken fondue. So the cheese itself is actually breaking. So really, low heat is key here, guys. So you want to make sure that your wine here doesn't boil. You don't want it to be too high of a temperature. So let this come to a light simmer, and I can start to see just a little bit of steam over the white wine here. And now I'm going to gradually add my coated cheese right into this white wine mixture. And I'm just going to gently stir this, adding the cheese, stirring gently. You don't want to vigorously stir this mixture. The more stirring, the more likely you are to break the cheese. And I'm using a enameled cast iron fondue pot here, which will melt the cheese evenly, and it will keep your fondue nice and warm without scorching it. A lot of the metal pans, the heat conducts through it too quickly, and it creates hot spots and will scorch the bottom of your fondue. So if you can find one of these cast iron pots, they really are ideal. Now, a classic cheese fondue like this is really delicious, just served with some cubed up bread, but you could really embellish or garnish your fondue with so many different things. If you wanted to blanch some broccoli or cauliflower, that would be fantastic. Some roasted potatoes is really great. Any vegetables, raw vegetables, carrots, radishes, if you like bell pepper, that would be fantastic here as well. It's really up to you how you want to serve your fondue. So I'm going to add the last bit of cheese here. And you want to make sure any flour that's left in the bottom of the bowl goes right into the sauce, because that flour is going to help stabilize your fondue. And continue to cook this over this medium-low heat until the cheese is nice and melted. Again, you guys, watch the heat. You don't want this to boil. So while the cheese is melting here, I'm gonna cut up my bread because that's what I'm serving my fondue with today. Now, you could certainly use a baguette if that's what you like. If you like whole grain bread, that would be fantastic. Or maybe you have a combination of the two, that would be great. Sometimes even a nice rye bread is really great with the cheese fondue because it helps to cut through the richness. The caraway seeds and that spice really helps to cut through the cheese and the acidity from the wine. And really cut these into bite-sized cubes. I think the idea here with serving anything along with a fondue is that you can spear it with a stick, a little skewer, and that they're bite-sized pieces. So don't put anything out that's oversized or difficult to eat, because the idea here is that you're meant to eat things in one bite. So the cheese is almost completely melted here. I'm gonna turn the heat down really low. And now I'm going to add a little bit of kirsch. And kirsch is a cherry brandy. It's very classic in this region, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, and even France, because it adds this dimension, this added flavor. I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of kirsch. And you're gonna stir that in. And 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. And lemon juice here, it adds a brightness to this because, again, there's a lot of cheese in here, but the acidity really helps in creating a nice, smooth, stabilized sauce as well. So 2 teaspoons, I'm gonna eyeball it, is really all you need. And as soon as all of the cheese is completely melted, we're ready to serve this, and I'll show you the best way to do that. So the cheese is just about melted here. I'm gonna turn the heat off and transfer this right to the stand that comes with the fondue pot. Put the lid on. Now I'm just serving this with some simple bread cubes today, but you could certainly pair your fondue with any of those wonderful accompaniments that I have mentioned before. And I can't wait to try this, guys. I mean, it's so rich, the smell is so great. The wine really helps to cut through all of that really rich cheese. Oh my gosh. It's delicious. I really encourage you guys to try this recipe if you're having problems with your fondue. And as always, let us know how it's going in your kitchen. Reach out to us using the hashtag Kitchen Conundrums. We love to hear from you and we love to see your pictures. Enjoy, guys. I know I am.